Good morning. Last time we finished chapter 15. I just want to repeat the last verse of the chapter, which says, but the Yevusi could not dispose but the Yehudi, meaning Bnei Yehuda, could not dispose the Yevusi, the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the Bnei Yehuda, the Yehudites, dwell with the Yevusi in Jerusalem to this day. Okay, so we talked a little bit about Jerusalem, and it's going to be later that Am Yisrael will take Jerusalem. But this closing verse is something that is going to repeat in the next chapters. In the end of these chapters, we're going to see which are the places that Am Yisrael couldn't take, and we're going to see that it's going to go growing all the time. More places. As we go with the tribes, we're going to see more places, more cities that were left without Am Yisrael taking it in the war. And like we explained, this was the root of the problems that we are going to see in the next books. Shoftim, Shmuel, all Melachim, all the problems with idolatry started with that. This here is the roots for all of that. So this, like the first verse, but we're going to see that next in the next chapters also. Okay, so now we start chapter 16. After Shevet Yehuda, we see Shevet Yosef. Is there a Shevet, a tribe that is called Shevet Yosef? No, it's divided to Ephraim and Menashe. But even though it's divided, we're going to see that in the beginning, the verses are treating them as the same tribe. It doesn't talk about each one of them separately. In the beginning, it talks about them together. That's what it says in first verse. The portion that fell by lot to the Yosephites. How do you read this word? Josephites? Josephites, okay. Ran from the Jordan at Jericho, from the waters of Jericho east of the wilderness. From Jericho, it ascended through the hill country to Bethel. From Bethel ran to Luz. Sometimes we see that Bethel and Luz is the same place. It says, Vayikra Shem HaMakom Bethel, ve'ulam Luz Shem ha'ir larishona. Its name was Bethel, but the original name was Luz. It looks like it's the same city, but here it looks like two different places. So there are apparently the one place that has different cities, and one of them stayed with the old name Luz, and one of them changed to the new name Bethel. From Bethel it ran to Luz and passed on the territory of the Archi at Atarot, descend westward to the territory of the Yefalti, as far as the border of Lower Bet Horon and Gezer, and ran on to the sea. Thus the Josephites, that is Menashe and Ephraim, received their portion. So in the beginning, it described the two tribes together. Now let's look for a second on the map. We can see that Ephraim and Menashe are the second, if we take them together, as it's described here, it's the second big inheritance, Nachala, in the land of Israel. After Yehuda, which is all the south, Ephraim and Menashe, it's basically all the central part of the land. And then it goes also in the other side of the Yarden, in the Golan Heights and Bashan and all this zone. So they also received a very, very big Nachala. Why? We can see that it's like parallel to Shevet Yehuda. And in many meaning, there are two tribes that are the two main parts of Am Yisrael. Yosef, the son of Rachel, and son of Rachel, and Yehuda, the son of Leah. They are the two sides of Am Yisrael. So after that, we see there is Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. According to our tradition, there are two Mashiachim. The first is Mashiach ben Yosef, and the other is Mashiach ben David. According to the Kabbalah, Mashiach ben Yosef is going to die. So they're going to die in the war. So there is a question, what is exactly Mashiach ben Yosef and what exactly Mashiach ben David? Apparently, Mashiach ben Yosef refer to the material parts and Mashiach ben David to the spiritual redemption. And that's why the beginning of the Geula that is going to be based on the material part of Am Yisrael is going to fail in some way. He's going to die. And then should be should come the second Geula, which is the spiritual Geula. But these two sides always continue with Am Yisrael, Yehuda and Yosef. And it's interesting, if we are taking how many Nachalot received the sons of Leah. How many sons Leah had? She has 6 sons, right? But Levi didn't receive any Nachala. So these are 5, right? But Shimon neither, because Shimon was inside the tribe of Yehuda. So we have 4 Nachalot for the sons of Leah. How many Nachalot received the sons of Rachel? We have Binyamin, which is 1. We have Ephraim, which is 2. And Menashe is divided for 2. So meaning also 4. We can see that even though Leah had 6 children and Rachel only 2, each one of them received 4 parts in the land of Israel. And then after that, the sons of the servants also received each one of them 2. So we see that it's divided more or less equally between the tribes of Rachel and the tribes of Leah. Okay, so this is about Yosef as one tribe. Both of them represent the side of Leah in Am Yisrael. But now the Tanakh is also divided them for 2. It says, so both sons of Yosef, Menashe and Ephraim, received that part, and then it starts with Ephraim. Who was the firstborn to Yosef? Who was born first? Menashe. So why it starts with Ephraim? We return to the story of Yaakov that changed the hands. Remember? When Yosef came to bless Ephraim and Menashe, he changed hand and he said that Ephraim is going to be bigger or more important than Menashe. Okay, we are going to go back to this story. Let's now see the places. So Ephraim is close to Yehuda, north a little bit, in the middle of the land, in the center of the land. So the territory of the Ephraimites, how do you read that? Ephraimites, by their clans was as follows. The boundary of the portion ran from Atarot Adar on the east to Upper Beschoron, and the boundary ran to the sea, onto the sea, and on the north. The boundary proceeded from Michmatat to the east of Ta'anat Shiloh, and passed beyond it up to the east of Yanocha in Hebrew. So from Yanocha he descended to Atarot and Naarat, touched on Yericho, and ran on to the Jordan. If you remember, Yericho belongs to Yehuda. So it arrived until there. Westward, the boundary proceeded from Tapuach to the Wadi Chanach and ran on to the sea. This was a portion of the tribes of the Ephraim by their clans. And then it says something strange. So Ephraim, this is his part, but it's not all what Ephraim received. Together with the towns marked off for the Ephraimites within the territory of Menashe, all these towns were with the villages. So there were some cities of Ephraim inside the part of Menashe. Why? Couldn't they receive all the territory together? Why did Ephraim had cities inside Menashe? Okay, we answer that soon. And then it says, like I said before, each tribe ends with a verse saying that they didn't complete the mission. So, however, they failed to dispossess the Canaanim who dwelt in Gezer. So the Canaanim reminded in the midst of Ephraim, as it is still the case, but they had to perform forced labor. So they could be stronger, but not defeat them totally. And we'll see another verse, and then we'll give some answer. So he says, and this is a portion that fell by the lot to the tribe of Menashe, for he was Yosef's firstborn. Why is it mentioned here that Menashe was the firstborn? If it's the reason why it's written here, it should be the otherwise. It should be, so he should have been the first one. Why does it say that he was the firstborn of Menashe? It looks like the word ki, meaning in spite of. In spite of being the firstborn, is still mentioned after that. So it says in Machir, the firstborn of Menashe, and the father of Gilad was a violent warrior. Gilad and Bashan were assigned to him. This is the eastern part. So now, okay, so now we're going to answer a little bit of the questions that we mentioned while reading. So again, we see that Menashe is the firstborn, but is mentioned second. This is one question. Why? And why is it mentioned that he's the firstborn? And the other question is why it looks like they are together one tribe, and then they are divided for two tribes, and then there are some cities in the inner territory of Menashe that belongs to Ephraim, right? So all this mix is not very clear. So let's now return to the story in Parashat Vayechi, the story about the blessing of Yaakov. And some of the things that I said now, I repeat what I said in the drasha of Parashat Vayechi, which I'm quite sure you all remember very good. No? So, if you remember, Yaakov in the end of his days, he called Yosef, and he asked him to bring Ephraim and Menashe to bless them. So Yosef brought his sons, and he told, please bless them, and he blessed them. And also in this point, he said that, that I will give you another part more than your brothers. And we explained that Yosef received in some way the right of the firstborn instead of Reuven. Reuven should have been the firstborn who received two parts, but Yosef received that in his place. For the sin of Reuven, for the merit of Yosef, to receive. And so that's the reason that these tribes are divided for two. Ephraim and Menashe, ki Reuven v'Shimon yiyu li. Ephraim and Menashe are considered like Reuven and Shimon in the meaning that they received two parts in the land of Israel. And then it says that he blessed him, but he mixed his hand. He crossed his hand, and he put the right hand on the head of Menashe, of Ephraim, and the left hand on the head of Menashe. And he blessed them. So Yosef said, no, you are wrong. This is not the firstborn. The firstborn is Menashe. Why did Yosef was so worried? What do you think? Exactly. So we know that all these fights about who is the firstborn brought a lot of suffering to the family, starting from Ishmael and Yitzchak, they fought, but more seriously, between Esav and Yaakov. Yaakov had to run away because he stole the blessing of Esav. And when he came back, so all this story of Yaakov himself, you suffered from that very strongly. And now you're doing the same mistake. Don't you remember what happened with your brother Esav that was so upset about losing the blessing, even though he was the firstborn? And if we continue, we can see that Yaakov made difference between his sons. And he gave kutonet pasim, an extra fancy clothes to Yosef more than other brothers. And he treated him differently, and that caused the hate. And then they sold him and wanted to kill him. So all that because not following, let's say, the justice in dividing things between brothers. So Yosef sees that, and they remember what's happened with Yaakov. He remember what happened with himself. He say, don't make the same mistake. How can you bless Menashe after Ephraim? How can you give the right hand to Ephraim and again cause these problems? Menashe is going to be very upset, and he's going to, I don't know, to fight with Ephraim, and he's repeating the same story. Can't we learn from the past? What was the answer of Yaakov? I know that he's a firstborn, but Ephraim is going to be bigger than him, more important than him. And why was it more important? So Yehoshua was from Ephraim, and from Menashe we had other leaders that were less important than Yehoshua. And well, for some reasons, we decide that Ephraim is more important than Menashe. But how it resolves the problem? By saying that, by giving it, by doing it legitimate, right? You are making the same mistake. What apparently was different in this case? Who was the one who changed the history in this sense? It's Menashe. Because Menashe accepted it. And this is a big difference. No, what Menashe understood that, okay, Ephraim maybe is more important to me, but it doesn't mean that I don't have my rule in Am Israel. It doesn't say that I don't have my importance, my aspect in this complete thing that is Am Israel. So here the big change wasn't the blessing of Yaakov or the wording of Yosef. The big difference was the reaction of Menashe, who could accept the fact that he is second. And sometimes it's the hardest thing to accept that you are not the first, that you are not the most important, that you have your role and your job and your position in Am Israel, but not as the first one, not as a leader. Actually, one of the sons of Ephraim himself couldn't accept that. Do you remember the story, the legend about Yehoshua and David? Let's remind it shortly. The Midrash says that, so first of all, Yehoshua ben Nevat was the tribe of Ephraim, and he was the one who divided the kingdom of Israel. In the days of the son of Shlomo, there was he led the 10 tribes to separate themselves from the kingdom of David and to establish a new kingdom, new independent kingdom. And apparently he was a big person, he was an important person. And the Midrash said, apparently symbolically, that Hashem told Yehoshua ben Nevat, let's unite together. I will take you, David, you and David and me will walk together in Gan Eden. I'm offering you a guided trip in Gan Eden. You, myself, Hashem told, Yehoshua, and David HaMelech. So Yehoshua asked, and who's going to be the first after you? So Hashem answered, David is going to be the first. Because, well, what does it mean? It means that two of you, David and Yehoshua, are going to lead Am Israel. But then he asked, who's going to be the first one? And Hashem asked him, and answered, David is going to be the first, and you are going to be the second. So Yehoshua answered, so I don't want. Meaning, I don't know to be the second. I don't have the character to be the second. Not like who? Jonathan. I mean, we have Menashe already, and we have Jonathan. Jonathan was a tribe of Binyamin, okay, also from the sons of Leah. And he accepted that David is going to be the king. Finally, he did in the war, but he said, when my father will die, Shaul couldn't accept it. He wanted to be the first and his son to be the first. But Jonathan, the son of Shaul, told David, when my father will die, you are going to be the king and I'm going to be the second. So he knew to be the second. So again, the challenge here is to accept the secondary rule, to accept that you are not the most important. And the first one who did that in the Bible is Menashe. So what is the result of that? The result of that even though they are divided between themselves, they can be together. That's the reason the two Nachalot, they couldn't be in different places in the land of Israel. No, but they are together. So in some meaning, Bnei Yosef is one thing divided for two. When you know to accept your part, when everybody knows to accept his rule inside the complete things, then it can work. And then these two tribes stay the same. And some towns from Ephraim can be inside Menashe, some people of Menashe can be with Ephraim. It's not a problem, because everybody knows to accept his place inside these complete things. Okay, so this is, I think, answering the questions that we mentioned. Machir, the firstborn of Menashe, received the other part of the Yarden, all the. Can you give me the map for a second? There is another one there. So he received the Bashan, which is here, up here, or this part. Like we said, the rest of the Nachalah is here, it's close to Ephraim, and they are together in some way. Some cities from Ephraim are inside Menashe. And so he received the Gil'ad and the Bashan. Yeah. And now assignments were made to the remaining Menashe by their clans, the descendants of Aviezer, Chelek, Asriel, Shechem, Hefer, and Shmida. Those were the male descendants of Menashe, son of Yosef. And now we have another story. Now Tzlofchad, son of Hefer, son of Gil'ad, son of Machir, son of Menashe, had no sons, but only daughters. Poor guy. The names of his daughters were Machla, Noah, Chogla, Milka, and Tirza. So it's a rare thing. Her names are mentioned clearly in the Torah and also in the Tanakh. And again, we are repeating here a story from the Torah that happened in what we read just 2 weeks ago, Parashat Matot Mas'ei. Okay, so they appeared before the priest Elazar, Yehoshua son of Nun, and the chieftains, saying, Hashem commanded Moshe to grant us a portion among our male kinsmen. So, in accordance with Hashem's instructions, they were granted a portion among the father kinsmen. So I want to, again, to repeat this story and to explain something else. So if you remember the story, Tzlofchad had only daughters. He had married to have part in the land of Israel, but as he died without daughters, all his nachala, all his inheritance should have gone to his brothers, because only sons get the heritage of the father. So his daughters, and he died because of some sins. Some say he was the one who was collecting wood on Shabbat. Okay, so there are when they tried to enter the land of Israel. So there are different opinions what was his sin, but clearly he didn't die for the sin of the spies. So it wasn't like he rejected the land of Israel, and he died without children. So they told Moshe, we want part in the land of Israel on the name of our father. And then Moshe didn't know what to answer. And he asked Hashem. One of the places that Moshe didn't know what to answer, he asked Hashem, and Hashem told him they should get some nachala, and he taught a new law. The new law was that if there aren't any sons, so the daughters would receive the nachala. After a while, the sons of Menashe came and complained. So these daughters are going to receive part in our inheritance, in our nachala. And then they are going to get married with men from other tribes. And the nachala would go after the husband, because the sons of this marriage are going, let's say that Chogla would marry someone from the tribe of, of Dan. So the son is tribe of Dan, but he receives the nachala of his mother, because the son will receive the nachala of his mother. So we're going to lose our nachala. Moshe asked Hashem what to do again, and the answer was no. So they would marry only people from their own family. So that's the way the nachala would stay inside the Shevet Menashe. And then, okay, so that was happening in the first generation, and after that, after a while, it was cancelled. So what's happened today? Let's say that we are in the land of Israel, divided by tribes. So now, if someone died without sons, who would receive his nachala? His daughter. And if she is married to other tribe, this part of the land of Israel would move from one tribe to another, because that was what the son of Menashe were afraid of. And that's exactly what is the law right now. I mean, we don't know the tribes, and we don't know which part of the land of Israel belongs to each one of them, but theoretically, that can happen now. Why? Because, we have tribes, we have different, this is like a gentle balance between tribes and one nation. For one side, yes, there are tribes, meaning there are different aspects, different ways of being a Jew, different customs to follow. There are tribes, there are differences. But from the other side, what is uniting us is stronger, is more important than what divides us. The division and the differences and the diversity is important, but also the union and being all one nation, it's also important. So this was the answer. Sometimes, rare cases, when someone gets married, die without children, and the daughter get married with other tribes, they're going to be mixed, and people are going to be mixed. We're going to see that towards the end of Sefer Shoftim, even though it's in a sad and bad story, we're going to see that people from Ephraim lived in the land of Yehuda. And that's why, there was some kind of mix, even though the tribes were defined in central places. Anyway, returning to our story, there is something similar in this chapter, in this story, so what we saw in the story of in the last chapter about Yehuda. If you remember, in the tribe of Yehuda, there was also a special family, the family of Caleb, and there also there was a story about a woman, the daughter of Caleb. The daughter for Caleb, Asa, that was married with Atniel ben Knaz, she demanded part in the land of Israel. If you remember, I want also Gulot Elite and Gulot Tachtit. So we see that the women of this tribe has some strong connection to the land of Israel. And in the other place, from the other side, also the sons of Menashe also demanded part in the land of Israel. They said, we don't want to lose that. What we can see that in these two tribes specifically, Yehuda and Yosef, we can see that also in the scene of the spy, who was the two that weren't against the land of Israel? Yehoshua bin Nun from the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb and Yefuneh from the tribe of Yehuda. So this is another reason. I don't know what is the reason, what was the result, but what we can see that in these two tribes, Yehuda and Menashe and Ephraim, and Yehuda and Yosef, there is a stronger connection to the land of Israel. While the Shevet Gad and Reuven wanted to stay in the other side of the Jordan, Shevet Menashe was fighting about the land of Israel. So we can see that these big differences in the tendency, in the connection with the land of Israel between Ephraim and Menashe and Yehuda to Gad and Reuven and the other tribes in the land of Israel, in Am Israel. So this is one of the explanation why the tribe of Menashe was divided, and some part of him was again given Achala, inherited in the other land of the Jordan. Again, we say that also, I will repeat that. When Gad and Reuven came to ask Moshe to stay in the other land of the Jordan, the Torah doesn't mention Shevet Ephraim, the tribe of Menashe. It doesn't mention, the Torah doesn't mention that Menashe also came. It was only Gad and Reuven. And they asked to stay in the other side of the Jordan, which after that became the land of Israel, but originally wasn't part of the land of Israel. And Moshe was very angry, and there was a negotiation, and in the end there was an agreement. You are going to send the soldiers first, and after that you're going to get this part. And in the final stage with the agreement, Moshe added, not only you, Gad and Reuven, I will also give half of the tribe of Menashe also this part. Okay, and this is like here what is upside. And the reason for that is exactly to create this connection. These two tribes lack of the connection of the land to the land of Israel. Will put another tribe which has this strong connection. I will divide him so he will stay connected to the land of Israel with his brothers, his family in the land of Israel, and that's how I will create that all these two tribes and a half will stay part of Am Israel, will stay part of the land of Israel. Okay, so this is about what we saw in this verse. In verse 4 was that these daughters now came to require what was agreed before. It was agreed that they will receive part in the land of Israel, so they now required it, and Yehoshua is giving it to them, Yehoshua and Elazar. 10 districts fell to Menashe, apart from the lands of Gilad and Bashan, which are across the Jordan. Because Menashe's daughter inherited a portion in this together with his sons, while the land of Gilad was assigned to the rest of Menashe's descendants. Just another comment, how many districts are for Menashe? 10. How many families there are? 6. So why 10? So apparently what the Mefarshim said, Rashi and Radak and others, that this daughter of Tzlofchad not only received part, they received 4 parts. Each one of them received 1 part. And they explain why. I won't explain how it's a complicated explanation, because the parts in the land of Israel were according to the generation that went out from Egypt, not according to the generation that came inside the land of Israel. So it was divided by them, and they considered like the first generation. So each one of them received part in the land of Israel, in the Nachalat Menashe. Anyway, this is divided to 2 districts. Now it's repeated again. The borders, like again, I don't know exactly these places, but we can see in the map where it's more or less. It's again in the center of Israel, going from the sea to the Jordan, norther a little bit more north than Ephraim, almost in the Galil, on the part of the Galil. So the boundary of Menashe ran from Asher to Michmatat, which lies near Shechem. The boundary continued to the right towards the inhabitants of En Tapuach. The region of Tapuach belongs to Menashe, but Tapuach on the border of Menashe belongs to the Ephraimites. Like remember, I said before that there were some cities inside Menashe that belongs to Ephraim. Then the boundary descends to the Wadi Kana. Those towns on the south of the Wadi belongs to Ephraim as an enclave among the towns of Menashe. The boundary of Menashe lay north to the Wadi and ran on to the sea. What lay on the south belongs to Ephraim, and what lay on the north belongs to Menashe, with the sea as its boundary. This territory was contiguous with Asher on the north and with Issachar on the east. Within Issachar and Asher, Menashe possessed Bet Shechem, Bet Shean and its dependencies, Ibleam and its dependencies, the inhabitants of Dor and its dependencies, the inhabitants of Endor and its dependencies, the inhabitants of Taanach and its dependencies, and the inhabitants of Megiddo and its dependencies. These constitute 3 regions. So again, it's interesting. Not only that Ephraim had towns inside Menashe, Menashe has towns inside Issachar. Okay, you can see that Issachar is near Menashe, a little bit north of the Menashe. It's near Afula. Where is Afula nowadays? There is a old place called Hevel Ta'anachim, which like we see here, Yoshve Ta'anach. And Menashe was inside Ephraim, Issachar. So what we can say is like, when you allow other people to live with you, also other people will allow you to live with them. Okay, so this attitude of Menashe, of accepting his role, of accepting the union, even in spite of the division, it's allow him also to get some part in other places, apparently according to what was suitable to each family, to each of the people of Menashe. So Ephraim had cities inside Menashe, and Menashe had cities inside Issachar. And again, we see the same things. The Menashe could not dispossess the inhabitants of these towns, and the Canaanim stubbornly, I mean like they were stubborn, okay, remained in this region. When the Israelim became stronger, they imposed tribute on the Canaanim, but they did not dispossess them. Okay, so this is about the tribe of Menashe. And again, we end with the part that they couldn't take, even though finally they could control it in some way, but not totally dispose it. Okay, I think we will stop. No, you have time to finish the chapter. So here, it's again a sign of weakness, what we're going to read now, and then also a sign of the love that they had to the land of Israel. So the Yosef complained to Yehoshua, saying, "Why have you assigned to our portion a single allotment and a single district, seeing that we are a numerous people whom Hashem has blessed so greatly?" So this is a little bit strange. The sons of Yosef, we understand now, Menashe and Ephraim, telling Yehoshua, "You only give me 1 nachala." We just saw they received 3. How it's 1? How it became 1? And he said, "It's not enough for me. It's not enough for you, but you're getting the biggest part in the land of Israel almost. So what does it mean that it's not enough for you?" The explanation here, according to the Mefarshim, that we are not talking about the sons of Ephraim. We are talking about the sons of Menashe, and not about the family of Machir, who was a separate family. We are talking about the rest of them. So yeah, it's not so big. If you're talking only about this part of Menashe, it's not so big, but still it's big, right? You can see that Menashe, even this part, if you're not talking about this part and about Ephraim, is bigger than Issachar, is bigger than Zvulun, than Naphtali, than Asher, than almost everyone, a part of Yehuda and maybe Gad, I don't know, and Dan. It's quite a big Nachala. What does it mean that they don't have enough space? And the answer is, there are 2 answers for that. First of all, there maybe was a big space, but most of it wasn't good to live for 2 reasons. For the Goyim, if you see in the what we just read in chapter in 13, Yehuda couldn't take Yerushalayim. Ephraim couldn't take Gezer. It's one city. When you talk about Menashe, what good couldn't they take? It says the Arim, these towns, not only one. Meaning we are now going down, right? Not only one city, now it's already become towns. So many towns, apparently, they couldn't take. And the problem was that the other part was mountain with forest. What it says here, it was forest, and they couldn't live. So in the end, the places that they could actually live was very reduced, very small. This is one side. The other side, also, what I explained before, is that the land was divided according to the people that went out from Egypt, not according to the generations that went inside the land of Israel. And then Farshim point out a very interesting difference between the first generation and the second generation. We just finished Sefer Bamidbar 2 weeks ago, and in Sefer Bamidbar there are twice that Moshe is counting Am Israel, in the beginning of the book and in Parashat Pinchas. What is the difference? The difference is that in the beginning of the book, it's in the first year or second year after they went out from Egypt, and in Parashat Pinchas, it's in the last year. Now, the total number is almost the same. It's around 600,000 people. The total number in the second year and in the last year, it's almost the same. But if you look on how it was divided between the tribe, you're going to see that the tribe of Ephraim has much less people in the last year, and the tribe of Menashe had much more people. So Menashe finally was much bigger than Ephraim, but the land he received was according to the first generation, where Ephraim was more than Menashe. So finally, what's the reclaim here? What they say here is that, yeah, the land maybe is divided. You can see it's maybe the same space, but like we explained, the places weren't like territory. It's according to places that are it's a quality of the places, the quality of the land, of the country. So the quality of the country of Menashe wasn't enough according to the numbers of the generations that went inside the land of Israel. And that how can I understand this argument, complaint of Shevet Menashe. From one side, they were more, and from the other side, they didn't have enough space. And what is the answer of Yehoshua? So Yehoshua answered, if you are a numerous people, Yehoshua answered them, go up to the forest country and clear an area for yourselves there, in the territory of the Perizi and the Rephaim. So it's still the territory of the Perizi and Rephaim. So we understand that there was a lot of space that they couldn't take yet, seeing that you are cramped in the hill country of Ephraim. So the Bnei Yosef answers, the hill country is not enough for us, the Yosef replied. And all the Canaanim who live in the valley area have iron chariots, both those in Bet Shean and its dependents, and those in valley of Israel. But Yehoshua declared to the house of Yosef, to Ephraim and Menashe, you are indeed a numerous people, possessed of great strength. You shall not have one and allotment only. The hill country shall be yours as well. True, it is forest land, but you will clear it and possess it in the farthest limits. And you shall also dispossess the Canaani, even though they have iron chariots and even though they are strong. Okay. So again, the problem here, it's require effort. You should clean the forest and you should win the war. And these are the two missions that you have to do. And this is stay like that. We don't see a solution. Apparently, all that they live very, how do you say, safuf. Well, cramped, or that you're going to work for your nachala. So what we can see here is that Yehoshua transfers the responsible to heritage, to take the land of Israel from the central government to the districts, to the provincias, right? So now it's not the responsible of Yehoshua, you should resolve your own problem. So this is, for one side, it's a good thing that everybody should participate, but it's the beginning of the division according to the tribes that we are going to see in Shevet Ephraim. Each one is for himself. Each one is take care of for himself. And if you cannot take the Knaani, you're going to be living cramped. If you cannot clear the forest, you're going to have problems. So that was the solution of Yehoshua, and it stays like that. We don't have any other solution here. What? Yeah, it's a republic. Yeah, but it wasn't a good republic. It was, we want to see republic which is provincia, is for itself, totally for itself. I know that in Alberta they're supporting that, right? Generally. Not everyone? Okay. Any question? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you.